If you watched Loki and your buddy began laughing and pointing excitedly at the scene with a beat-up old helicopter, you're definitely in the presence of a Marvel Comics fan. The Thanoscopter is an oft-ridiculed piece of hardware with an interesting history, as it featured prominently in a now infamous Spider-Man comic. The Thanoscopter first appeared in Spidey's Super Stories number 39 in 1979. It was created by Larry Lieber, the longtime illustrator of the Amazing Spider-Man newspaper comic strip. Spidey's Super Stories wasn't a typical Spider-Man comic at all, so it's not something every fan of the old web had read when it was released. Spidey's Super Stories was intended for a much younger audience of readers than the typical Spider-Man comic, and it doesn't actually take place in the main Marvel universe of Earth 616. The otherwise forgettable issue featured a story called The Cat in the Cosmic Cube, and that's where this vehicle first appeared. In the story, Thanos used the Thanoscopter to attack Hellcat while she had the Cosmic Cube in her possession. And what's so striking and strange about the Thanoscopter is its design, because it's just ridiculous. It's a bright yellow bubble-domed helicopter with the word Thanos emblazoned along the body on both sides. Seeing the Mad Titan riding this thing was just odd, and instead of suggesting any sort of danger or menace, Hellcat was, she thought it was silly. Of course, this book was all about entertaining children, so the people who read it when it was released weren't as discerning as the older readers more familiar with Thanos. Seeing as it became something of a joke, the Thanoscopter rarely appeared in any other Marvel comic books. In fact, decades passed before Thanos' favorite ride showed up again in a Marvel comic. While it was never intended to be associated with Thanos outside of the Spidey Super Stories, it did on one occasion. In 2015's Deadpool number 45, Thanos hired Deadpool to steal a cosmic cube for him. He picked up the mercenary in the Thanoscopter, but Deadpool ended up destroying it via some cosmic cube/infinity gauntlet shenanigans. In the end, the story repeats, but Thanos gets the best of Wade Wilson, saying, "My sky chariot is not for the likes of you." He then kicked the Merc with a mouth out of it and flew off into the sunset. By 2015, the Thanoscopter was a joke people liked poking fun at, and while it did show up in a video game via LEGO Marvel's Adventures the following year, few could have guessed it would appear in the MCU. Still, its presence in Loki's penultimate episode actually does make a lot of sense. When Loki finds himself stranded in the TVA's dumping grounds, he's confronted with all of its pruned alternate realities. Anything from an alternate universe like the Thanoscopter, for example, could be seen strewn around the landscape. Since the Thanoscopter wasn't something from the primary Marvel universe, it makes sense that the TVA would prune it in line with the organization's primary mission of securing the sacred timeline. Despite its scant use in the books and minor appearances in Loki, the Thanoscopter has been made into a toy on several occasions throughout the years. You can purchase a remote control version of it for $15, and there was even a convention-exclusive toy released in 2018. It also played a role in Thanos' design from Avengers Endgame. Thanos used a massive sword during his fight against the heroes in the movie's third act. The large sword was perfectly balanced, having two large blades connected by a grip in the middle. Those blades were designed specifically with the Thanoscopter in mind. Thanos' creator, Jim Starlin, mentioned in an interview that the sword was the only part of the movie he hated. He said, "The one thing they did, and I will never forgive the Russos and writers Marcus and McFeely for, was that they brought the weapon in, which was inspired from the Thanos helicopter, which most everybody had almost forgotten about." Starlin may have created Thanos, but he absolutely hated the Thanoscopter, and he hoped the fans would forget about it and move on. Whenever anyone mistakenly credits him with its creation, he's quick to correct them, and it happens often enough that he's brought it up in interviews. Regardless, the fans love the Thanoscopter's silliness. While it may not make another appearance in the MCU, its presence on Loki was more than enough of a treat for any fan who knew of its existence.